All right, good evening. I have 6 o'clock, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Jake is actually in the boardroom here this evening as well. He's having a little bit of a technical issue, which I think he's joining us shortly here. So all board members are present, and we will get started with communication items. Ms. Holmberg, you're up first.
Great, thank you. Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight. We'll start out with last week was Teacher Appreciation Week, where we thanked our teachers for their dedication, their hard work, their willingness to think outside the box and learn new things with our kiddos through this distance learning opportunity. Our staff can pride themselves on putting kids first and reaching out to one another for support. So I'm very proud of them and very thankful for all the work that they do. We're working on Kindergarten Roundup. I'm sure that you read in the newspaper on social media that we did that virtually this year. We have 71 confirmed kindergarten friends for this fall. We're waiting for responses from 7 families. When we sent all the information out, we began calling families on that very first Monday and saying, hey, we're here at Paynesville Elementary School and we just want to welcome you to our program and be looking in the mail for the forms to fill out and the paperwork to complete. And then the last 2 Mondays since then, they're reaching out. 2 of our paraprofessionals, Mary Heinen and Amy Spanier, are doing a fantastic job of reaching out to families who haven't yet submitted their paperwork. So just really building that very friendly bridge to all of our kindergarten families to say, hey, can we help you out in any way? And we understand you might not get the birth certificate, you might not have the immunizations up to date, but how can we move forward and make this positive for us in planning for next year? So that's good news. Our ECSE K-8 SPED assessment position, we're interviewing for on Friday. We've been working on schedules, solidifying Phy-Ed, STEAM, music, and media, and then working on creating the Power Half Hour and ELA and math blocks for our grade level team. So it's that time of year. All these meetings are happening in this format, so it's really interesting getting everyone's input and figuring it all out distantly. We're also talking about ECFE and preschool. We had a really good team meeting this morning. I'm sure Matt will fill us in on some of those details when it's his turn to share. We are looking at summer plans for targeted services and an extended school year for our SPED friends. And we're just kind of waiting on the governor to give us some direction on what that'll look like. It appears he's working with Minnesota Department of Health, Minnesota Department of Education, and all kinds of players to decide what that can look like and how different it will be. We're predicting that it may involve lots of Google meetings, center-based and smaller groups, some home visits, digital learning. So we're trying to figure that out. In the meantime, our MTSS teachers, Marie Grothy and Maria Rasmussen, will be taking classes this summer to help them with the multi-tiered system of support that we've been talking about kind of off and on all year. So look for more growth and reflection on that. Grade level department meetings are going well. In our family update, you probably saw that our staff applied for and received 3 grants. One is a Donors Choose grant for first grade. One is a community giving grant for our Pop Hacks program. And then the third is for our Prairie Care Fund. So that'll help us with our social emotional learning programming coming up this year. That'll be happening K through 12. So it's really exciting. It's fun being a Bulldog in the spring, and it's really interesting learning all of the nuances of what we have going on in this fashion instead of having everyone at school. So thank you for your patience as I learn the ropes, and we're figuring it all out together. So that's it for me. Do you have any questions?
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Orline, you're up.
All right. Apologize for coming in here late. I couldn't get my camera to work. So right now we're just spending really a lot of our time working on graduation, which I'll address here in a little bit. We're looking at, different options and looking at guidelines as far as the graduation and the grading system goes. And so just working closely with each department to walk through that. And we're hoping by my department meetings on Thursday and Friday that we'll have something concrete in place for what grading is going to look like for this spring. We are still meeting with committees and planning on what our daily schedule is going to look like next year, and working on getting classes scheduled and trying to get that organized. We're a little bit behind schedule on that right now. And then we are continuing to look at upgrades in the building. We had the construction companies in starting this week, but we are also looking at some different furniture options and some cafeteria tables and upgrades to our student center. And we continue to get the hallways painted. That's really about all I have. Any questions for me? Okay.
Thanks, David. Matt, community ed? Is Matt is here. You're in.
Yep,
I found you in the corner there. Sorry.
I know where I rate in your boxes there, Matt. So, we are kind of in a holding pattern on it, like many are, as far as programming. However, we have pivoted to doing quite a bit online. We are holding our first ever quarantine 2020 virtual 5K run and 1K tot trot. We have many art programs. We have adult enrichment, gardening, lawn maintenance, defensive driving. We have a sidewalk chalk mural competition going on, virtual fitness, group fitness classes, and many more other things planned. Our entire summer brochure program was together and ready, and we cannot publish that, of course, and we can't put it out because we're still waiting on guidance from the governor. So unfortunately, we still have over 70 kids that are families that need childcare for this summer with our pause program. And all I can tell them is we are moving forward, we're planning, but we do not have authorization to offer that yet. So our associations that we're involved in are putting pressure on the governor because we can't just do these programs overnight. There's a lot of planning. We need to hire a lot of people. So we don't know yet if we can even offer the summer pause. So the ECP program is going well. They're averaging in the high 20s each day. I really appreciate the staff. They're working so hard, especially with the distance learning. They're really working hard with the students. We've also pivoted. I've talked to you before about our live stream. We've now broadcast 5 of the Talk of Paynesville broadcasts. We have about 2,000 views on that program, and we had our state senator and state representative as our guests last week. So I was talking to them prior to the show, putting a bug in their ear about just needing decisions made here soon. So they were very gracious to be on the show. We sure hope that the fitness center can open next week. That's a lot of revenue. That's they pretty much shut off all community ed revenue here since, we've been shut down. So preschool, like Mary said, we had a great preschool meeting today. We have 2 spots left in our 3-year-old 2-day-a-week program next year. We have 6 4-year-old spots left. And yeah, they're doing a fantastic job. They're getting a new curriculum. They're doing a lot of alignment, and Mary will be able to talk more about that, but they're really doing a good job and really being incorporated in the K-5 system too. So we're great for that. We bought and made a live stream trailer. I just finished putting that together today. So we have our own trailer. So when we can, our plan is to be able to broadcast for softball right out in the outfield. So we'll be elevated over the fence. We're hoping to use it for graduation here. So that's a project. And we did get a grant from the Community Foundation for our live stream program for $700. So any questions for me? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Let's see here. Max, are you with us?
Man, I'm coming and going. I hope you can hear me. For whatever reason, my screen keeps going green when I pull up the video, and it's froze a couple times. But you can hear me, Matt?
We can hear you just fine. We just can't see you, but that's okay. So
yeah, that was by preference, I suppose. So primarily each day I've been the main thing that I've been focusing on every single day is just that lunch program, helping get those 7 buses loaded and out. We're getting supplies returned from students, library books, things like that are coming in. We're thankful that we've only had to deal with rain 2 times. And so if you picture the front, like the west side of the high school, there's 7 buses along those sidewalks that load up. So we spread the stuff out. So when it rains, we have to do it a little bit differently. So that's been good. And we continue to do that. The Minnesota State High School League started something when school went to distance learning called the LEAD Initiative. And so on Thursdays, every week they do a Zoom meeting for ADs. This week's on technology update that they're doing for their website. And the second half will be on programming and personnel. One of their main focuses as a league is AD retention. The tenure for an AD average is below 5 years. I normally would get that information at the state AD conference, and that was canceled this year due to COVID-19. So that's one of their focuses. The board of directors had last year adopted a policy, so all of the activities directors in the state of Minnesota have to follow. So in order to become a head coach in a sport, there's 4 different ways that you can meet the Minnesota State statute, and one of those ways is an in-person head coaching class. And they adopted a policy requiring all the activities directors to do a same course so that they can help with some of the continuing education and hope for retention of people. That was also supposed to take place during the state AD conference, and that's going to be done over the course of the next 3 Wednesdays. There's online Zoom meetings for that as well. I just finished almost all of the spring scheduling stuff for next year. I will be helping frame the wall for a clear garage door that's going in the old high school media center. It's wide open and it's awesome. Student center, it's called, and Mr. Orline had a great vision for that. Unfortunately, during like the nighttime hours, there's just no way to close that thing down, and so people can go down in the hallway and you can't tell if anybody's in there. So we're going to be putting a big overhead clear garage door in there. So that's going to get framed in sometime next week. Next fall, when we do Zoom activities, we'll have 2 new conference schools in the last 2 years in our conference. So ACGC is going to be replacing Howard Lake, Waverly, Winstead, and Royalton just replaced Piers this past year. So like our spring sports that didn't get a chance to participate, 1/4 of the conference is going to be new. If you're tracking a little bit of the changes, our conference, especially from when we were in the old West Central Conference, has really become centralized. ACGC for Howard Lake is a great trade for our kids for travel and transportation and school like ours. So that's a fantastic deal for us and for our kids and their families. Our dance team, which is co-opted with BBE, has been participating in the Camden Conference. When we left the West Central Conference, dance team was one of the activities that we had that the Central Minnesota Conference didn't offer as a conference sport because not enough schools offer it. We've been joining the Camden Conference. There's a possibility that we'll actually join the West Central Conference now. ACGC is coming to the Central Minnesota from the West Central Conference, and their dance program is going to continue to participate in the West Central Conference, and we've been invited to do that as well. So that wouldn't be necessarily anything that the board would need to act on as it's just a standalone sport, but just as an FYI. I don't have anything else unless somebody else has some questions for me.
I do not see any, Max. Thank you. Donnie.
Yes, here I am. I'm going to give you a little construction update today. I think with these construction guys running around, I answered 101 questions or better today, but they started demoing in the shops. They've got a lot of the duct work out in both the wood shops and welding shop. The electricians were out and unhooked some of the power in the shops and started pulling wires. The sprinkler crew, they were out and mapped all the areas that we need sprinkler heads put in yet. And they should be starting, I imagine, next week the way it sounded. We have had the boiler manufacturer out here, and he confirmed that the holes we are cutting into the walls and roof, that the boilers will actually fit through the holes, which was a good deal. They were a little worried about that. Talked to Voss Plumbing, well, Voss Excavating anyway. They hope to start the parking lot next week. I'm not sure how well that'll work yet, but he was hoping to get in there. We have Resource Training and Solutions working on getting bids for removing asbestos in the shop areas, 2 classrooms in the armory. Hope to get them bids in soon because they're waiting on that. We've had a bid to demolish the armory, and we should get another bid by tomorrow from another company. Let's see what else. CenterPoint Energy is coming out to hook up or to unhook their gas meter and line from the armory. And then on Thursday, I got a meeting with XL Energy to unhook power from the armory. We have students out pulling the fence. You've probably seen that around the armory. That's close to done. The posts are in. I imagine they wanted to hold elephants out the way it looks, but oh, and this one's for Dave. They confirmed that the ceiling tile in the cafeteria will be removed and all put back in by 2x2s. Other than that, any questions?
Yeah, this is Rick. I just got I don't know if it's for you, Donnie.
Yep.
But for someone, you mentioned starting to work on the parking lot. What are the plans for the fitness center entrance as far as people getting in and out if that opens up? Is there still a way to get in through the same door, or is it going to have to work through the front door or the west door?
That will be fenced off, and they will be coming through door number 3, I believe it is, on the west side. We're going to have that all key fobbed the same as door 1 was.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Donnie? I am not seeing any. Thanks, Donnie. All right, so then let's get into the agenda items, and we will start with distance learning update. I am just going to share this screen, at least so the agenda is on here. All right. So the first thing is there's 2 items. I'm going to have Mary talk a little bit about the elementary school report card in just a little bit. But the other item that's on there is just an article I had come across and was reading earlier, late last week actually, about an Education Next article. I know there's been a lot of conversation and questions about what are the next steps and what do things look like for summer? What do things look like for fall? I thought this article just kind of neatly put it into frame the issue and potentially what schools would be looking at as far as trying to answer that question. When do they open and all of those things. As Matt had said, the school districts are increasingly growing impatient with where things are at as far as summer programming is concerned. And to be quite honest with you, I think there's a lot of school districts that are really thinking that we should be having a pretty good clue as to where fall is at. And they're feeling obviously like that's not happening, and so that's a struggle, and it's a stressor. So governor's having a press conference tomorrow. My understanding is there will be some more announcements made as far as the stay-at-home order and what that means. I did participate on a conference call with the commissioner last week. And late last week, they were talking about having summer guidance ready for school districts very soon. I actually thought by today we would have seen something with summer guidance. Obviously, we still haven't. And so that'll be an important next step for us as well. Matt already talked about the need for childcare services during the summer, but I think there's also a variety of other issues at play. A lot of it having to do with, for instance, special education students and services right now within distance learning, special education evaluations, all of those things that are all kind of just been, we've been hitting a pause button, need to be addressed, and we need to figure out how to prioritize resources to make that happen. As soon as I get something on summer programming, I will certainly get that out to the board. But no, I am waiting just as patiently as Matt is and everyone else. And so hang in there, and we're going to figure out what that guidance is and how we can implement that at Paynesville. So with that, Mary, do you want to talk a little bit about kind of what the elementary school is looking at doing for report cards? And then maybe David, after that, you just want to touch base quickly on kind of what the thoughts are. I know nothing's solidified yet, but the thoughts at the secondary.
Sure. Thank you. So we've had a lot of conversations at the elementary level about our goal when this all began, which was to, of course, increase the academic growth in all of our kiddos, and then to foster that social emotional well-being from their home with limited access to them. So we've been having some really good conversation about what grading should be looking like and what we're actually grading. We know that our report cards need to be student-centered. The question of the day is, are we grading privilege if we stick with academic-only grades? So we've been throwing around a few different ideas. The attached report card is one that we're just discussing right now. I have a feeling it's the one that we're going to move forward with because it provides us that direct way to contact parents and say, here are your child's strengths. Here are some areas for your child to work on. And then just to provide some extra comments without making it a negative experience. And at the same time, acknowledging that our kiddos are being amazingly strong and they're working so very hard. If you think about it, 99% of our elementary kids are under the age of 12. So let's take a moment and think about how scary this must be for them and all the supports that we have in place to help them succeed. We don't want their life to be dependent upon what's happened during the last 9 or 10 weeks of their elementary school year for 2020. So we want to talk about engagement. If you look at this form, what does engagement look like for our kids? Are they joining us in Google Meets? Are they contributing to Flipgrid? Are they part of Seesaw? Are they emailing their teachers? With our new May calendar, we have Fridays set aside for teachers to meet one-on-one with our kids. Great opportunity. I'm hearing wonderful, wonderful things about how that connection is really helping students and families to feel supported. So we're just wanting to focus on the strengths and the skills and then have that important conversation with families at the end of this time period and just make sure that we're focusing on the social emotional well-being of the child and the family. Questions?
I don't see any. Mary. David, do you want to talk just a little bit about the secondary?
Yeah, so secondary is grades 9 through 12 is a little more complex in regards to grading because we have to take into account what colleges will be accepting for grades for certain classes. We are getting some guidance on that from MDE, and I think the colleges they're kind of still all over the board on that. Some schools are offering students a choice between a pass or a letter grade, but with kind of the unknowns on what colleges are going to accept for those. Right now, we are focusing on students who have not participated very well and really putting our efforts into making contact with those students. Our grading scale, the state is recommending some guidance in that as far as how we hold students accountable for that. But what we're looking at probably is some type of a condensed grading scale with opportunities, if there are any incompletes that they would carry over into the next school year, so that if students needed to work on something, they would have the opportunity to do that in a school setting. we're just really stressing the teachers to be flexible and take into account effort. And one thing that we kind of had going for us a little bit is our third quarter grades. Third quarter was pretty much done, and all of our classes, 9 through 12, are semester classes. So it really comes down to how we are going to handle those quarter grades for fourth quarter and how they will work with the third quarter grades. But we have a plan that I think is going to be pretty solid. And once I have an opportunity on Thursday and Friday to continue to work with my staff on that, then we'll have updates for the students at that point. Any
Questions at all for Mr. Arline? Oh, we got one question here. Go ahead, Ashley.
Oh, sorry, Maggie. I was just going to ask what your take on middle school is, because I have 2 middle schoolers and 2 elementary, and I'll just go on record as saying that they are simultaneously incredibly stressed by the situation, all 4, but also probably taking extreme academic advantage of it. I don't know how else to say that nicely or positively, but there's not a whole lot of pressure on them to learn just to check off a bunch of lists. And they've had to download so many. I know we say that they shouldn't have to, but I don't know how to download these things on Chromebooks at all. And they've had to contact for Garrick for like a zillion different apps, and I still don't know nothing about it. But I'm not sure any of my 4 are worried about grades at all. I know you were talking about grades, but just how this is going to end up and how we're going to move on. And we don't have any answers for fall again. So maybe it's that not knowing that's really the most stressful, is they want to kind of have some grasp of what the new normal is going to be and when that's coming, and none of us know. So
yeah, as far as the grading goes, in 6th through 8th grade, they're not accumulating credits for graduation. So we are looking at different options for that. We understand that when students get back in the fall, there's going to be some regression, and there's going to be a need for spending some time on refreshers and getting caught up. And we're hoping to be able to build some of that time into the curriculum, and so that we can spend a little time with it. But then we also need to continue to move forward with the curriculum.
Maggie, did you have a question too?
Mine was more of kind of a comment. I was just listening to everything, but wanted to kind of go back after everybody reported out to that blueprint that you shared. It's really overwhelming to see all of that has to happen or should happen between now, what the expectation is for school districts. There's like huge concerns, like reading through it, like when you're thinking about transportation, if there's social distancing, on buses, all those things, when you add up, I'm just asking, like, as a board member, as a parent, like when I read through all that, I'm like, how is any district actually supposed to accomplish these things? So what can we as a board do to support the district? What can we as parents do? Because we don't know what's going to happen, but there could potentially be a lot of budgetary implications based off of what is decided. And that's where I was like, oh my gosh, like how are we supposed to do some of these things if we're, the options that they laid out, if students come back half days? I mean, and not saying that we would do any of those things, but reading through it, I mean, it's concerning with the lack of time that districts are given and the amount of like preparation that is required, along with not having any idea of the budget. I know that's like a bunch of gray and chaos that I'm putting out there, but it's like that.
Hey, that's what I wanted to say too. I want to second what you were saying, because reading through that packet of the blueprint, I know you referenced it, Matt. as guidelines, but it's so vague, and it's like you got to be prepared for this and that and this, and it's a lot, and it's a lot of not knowing and a lot of stress, but also a lot, like preparation and budget stuff. I mean, when do we start making decisions on this, and when do we start as a board? I mean, even as a parent, I don't know what to tell my kids. I'm like, I don't know what it's gonna look like in summer and fall. But as a board, when do we start saying, well, we gotta do stuff about this? I don't know.
Maggie, did you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, I think it's kind of all of that. Just what can we do to be prepared? One of the things that, with teachers' contracts, if this is going to require a lot of some work, like how do we navigate through that? And again, I don't expect you to have answers, but it's more of throwing out there. Maybe it's going to require a bigger community to help with this. Maybe not. What can the board do? How do we remove obstacles? Because to me, this is just, it seemed like it's not the impossible, definitely not, but it's going to require a whole lot of different, if that's the case of what is the expectation of what's required.
Yeah, and I think, and when I read the article too, I have a lot of questions. The article actually probably just gave more questions to me and put more questions in my head than it actually answered any questions. But I still think it was good for me to at least spend some time reading it and getting into that mind frame of asking those questions. Now, is anybody going to have all of the answers to those? I would argue the answer is probably no. And the reality is, depending on how Minnesota chooses to go about this, or how any other state or region goes about this reopening of public schools and private schools and parochial schools, it's all going to look a little bit different depending on exactly where you're at. At the end of the day, the one thing that I think I can hang my hat on at Paynesville is I do believe that between the board and the administrative team and the teachers and all of the staff, I am getting a overwhelming consensus of a feeling that the intent here is to do what's in the best interest of students. And that to me is what we have to stick to. We need to be committed to how do we put whatever the guidelines are for sending students back to school. How do we put those together in such a way that we are making the best quality decisions for students? Is it going to be different, Maggie? Absolutely, it's going to be different. Is it going to probably be a larger undertaking than just something that a school can do on its own? It truly will. We're going to need parents on board. We're going to need community on board as well. So I think it's good to be thinking from that question perspective, because we are going to have students back on campus. What it looks like and when and how and what are the guidelines, I don't think anybody right now could tell you. There's as many different scenarios out there as there probably are people thinking about it. At the end of the day, though, when it's go time, when it's time for students to be back on campus, these doors are going to be open, and we are going to be ready for whatever it is that we need to do in order to get kids back in these buildings. So again, the intent of the article wasn't to intimidate or scare or make anyone fearful. I think the intent of the article is just really more of a broader overview to say, these are the questions that we're starting to grapple with, and those conversations are going to be coming forward.
Thank you, that helps. And that's kind of like when these are the questions we should be thinking about. And so that's where because I shouldn't go right into solution, but then you start going, okay, so do you have a contingency budget? Do you have, like, what are all those kind of factors? And when do we start putting that alongside the current work? So, I mean, because fall is not that far away. And again, you don't have to answer it, but that's where my brain is going, is like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of planning. Do you have a contingency budget? What do you do about transportation costs? What do you do about all those additions that are potential, like the questions that the article raised?
Yeah, so, and just so board members, I realize we do have some newer board members. I'm assuming, well, I don't necessarily know the history of Paynesville, but Minnesota does have a very robust borrowing system for schools as well. So there's a statewide system that school districts can participate in to borrow for our operational cash flow needs. The state meters out payments over the course of 10 months. And so sometimes, depending on where a school district's fund balance is, there will be leaner months of state aid. And so if you don't have a sufficient fund balance, you would go into this borrowing pool. And it is, the interest rates are very low. Even when rates come up, these rates are still very low, although we are paying interest on it. And so that is a downfall. It does cost you a little bit to participate in that. So that's one thing that I just want everybody to understand, is that program is universally out there. It's accessed every year by, I bet right now, I bet there's probably at least 100 school districts in Minnesota that access it. Back when Governor Pawlenty was in office, and we had a series of 0% increases on state aid, I bet you there was probably as many as 250 to 260 of the 330 school districts in the state were participating in that program, just because they had already spent some of their budget reserves. And now when they went to make payroll to meet their operational obligations, they didn't have enough cash in the bank for all the checks to cash. And so we can participate in things like that. It's not free, but it's very low interest participation, and it's a good program. So know that there's tools out there for us to be able to have some financial flexibility. They don't cost us nothing, but they are pretty good tools in order for us to be able to make sure operationally we can still make ends meet and things like that. Any other questions regarding distance learning or COVID-19, where things are at? Oh, I wanted to also just let the board know, just as an FYI, today, Max mentioned it when he was talking about the meal distribution program. Today we distributed 1,150 meals to students and families in our district at our satellite sites and at the elementary school. That's a total count when you add breakfast and lunch together. That's the highest number we've reached since we've been doing this. So I think that's awesome. That's a good thing. And the one thing that's becoming really clear to me is that need is going to continue. We are already building plans to somehow continue to operate this meal distribution once school is out. And so we're trying to figure out how we can do this, and we're having more conversation to see if we could maybe do this in such a robust way that we could position ourselves next year that breakfast could be free for all of our students. I don't know if we can make the dollars and cents work out that way, but that's one of the conversations that's going on right now with the business office, and the admin team is talking about how we can take what we're doing right now and expand that into summer and what it could look like next school year as well. So just an FYI with meal distribution. Any other questions? Okay, let's move on then to the commencement. Mr. Orline, you're up again.
All right, the question of the week. So, first of all, we will have commencement on May 31st at 2:00. And last week, the Department of Health and Governor and MDE came out with some guidelines that kind of answered some questions for us and kind of put us on a path of the plan that we have now. So far in the last week, I've met with Chief Wagner twice. I've met with Matt Dickhausen and our admin team. I've met with some seniors. I've emailed all of the seniors. I've emailed all of the families of the seniors, and kind of put a little bit of what we were looking at out there. So what we're looking at is starting with a car parade that would begin somewhere around the ambulance garage. And so that was what I have been meeting with Paul Wegner about, what a route would look like and how they would cover it and get us over to the high school safely. We're looking at something, a parade route that would go past the nursing homes and then end up at the secondary, where we're hoping that we can get all of the cars into the middle school parking lot while practicing social distancing, and try to get a class picture from either a drone or on top of the school for the students to have. And then we will have a stage set up at the main entrance where myself and Mr. Bullard and school board will be, and cars will be able to drive up to the stage. The graduate can walk across and get their diploma, and we will have a professional photographer there if the graduate and immediate family want to take a quick picture, and then we'll move on to the next car. And then we would have staff along the west parking lot also, so that they can acknowledge and wave at the graduates. What we're looking at doing it overall is really a combination of a live ceremony and a pre-recorded. Matt Dickhausen and I spoke today about the live stream and how that could look and how he can incorporate his new trailer into that. What we would plan on doing is having somebody sitting kind of by the stage, and we would be doing a live stream of that part of it. And then the pre-recorded speeches I have set up to come in just right after Memorial Day weekend, and they would be done in our studio, so the sound quality would be really good. And then Matt would incorporate the speeches and the musical selections into the live stream. And so anyone watching at home would basically have that whole ceremony. I met with band and choir, and they're working on a couple pared down musical selections and members of the choir. So they will have something set up soon. And then at the end, maybe a week or so after the ceremony, then that whole file would either just be available through the live stream on the YouTube channel, or we would set up some type of file where students and families would be able to access the whole ceremony. What we want to try to do is encourage students to decorate their cars, do something on their vehicle to recognize them. We would invite immediate family. So if parents or brothers or sisters wanted to ride in the vehicle with the student, we would encourage that, so that when it's time for that student to go across the stage, that immediate family could hop out of the car and have a photo opportunity with their graduate, and then they would be able to get back into their vehicle and drive on. We are having a banner created that we'll use as a backdrop on the stage, something about the class of 2020, so that the graduates can stand in front of that for their pictures. That is a brief synopsis of what we're looking at. It's going to take a lot of coordination. We are going to need, we're talking about, the number of people we need at the start of the parade, at the end of the parade, and how it all would work as far as making sure that we had that we know that whoever's announcing the live stream would know who is coming up in their vehicle. And so we're working on a system on that right now, and then we'll just be reaching out to people who want to volunteer and help out with that, and just continuing to work with the Paynesville Police and everyone that we can get involved, and try to make it we know it's going to be different, and we know it. Kids have missed out on a lot this spring, and I think I really feel if we can have a creative car parade, we can bring in some of that, the Grand March type style to the graduation ceremony, and hoping that we can pull off the class picture too when they get into the middle school parking lot. So, any questions?
What about the staters? Do you need us or not then?
Yeah, that'll be something that we're going to try to hammer out some of those details tomorrow on how else we would get other students involved in that. Yes.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yep.
I have a question about so if you didn't purchase your cap and gown and cords and stuff like that, would we have to give that stuff back that day, or then would we just come in later and return that?
We had this discussion about collecting things, and really, to be quite honest, I'm not real concerned about collecting the cords immediately, or if at all. And we just want, at this point, the graduates to enjoy the day and not have to go through a ceremony and then all of a sudden have to give things back to us. So we're working on a system, and then we're just kind of deciding how we want to do it, and whether we can just absorb the cost of those. I have a breakdown of what everything costs, and so we're working on that.
Bruce has a question here too. Go ahead, Bruce.
If you can hear me. So
Yes.
if live stream is going to announce the graduates they come up, will that be the only person announcing them? We wouldn't have multiple, right? So they would say, Jane, whatever, is the graduate, probably have a photo of their car pulling up, and then we would participate, but there won't be a secondary announcing of that. Perfect.
Right.
So it seemed really coordinated.
Any other questions?
I assume that there's plans for rainy weather. It's under a trailer or something, under a.
Yeah, we'll take all of that into account. I think with the bad luck that we've had all spring, I think Mother Nature owes us a really great day. So I'm confident that's going to happen.
We could put a tent up if we had to.
Yeah, we'll have contingency plans on. We're not going to change the date or the time. We want to have it on the date that we scheduled. Other people have plans maybe for that, later that afternoon or things like that, and we'll make sure that we can pull it off successfully no matter what the weather is.
I for one have to say it sounds really good to me. I think it's about the best we could do, and have something to create a memory for these kids, because that's what it's about.
Definitely.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, David. Are we ready to move on to the budget portion? Well, if we aren't, we're going to move on anyway. Again, I will just put this on. Okay, so as far as the budget is concerned, the two attachments that are on the agenda, I did just put the 2021 budget update. That PDF you have probably seen at least twice now. I did not put an update on there. There's nothing actually that's different from when we looked at it in April until tomorrow. Tomorrow, our admin team is getting together, and I think we're going to actually have some kind of finalized plans with this facility projects and stuff. So after tomorrow, when we come back for the May business meeting, the budget will be back on the agenda, and you're going to see any changes at that time. The other attachment is a spreadsheet, and that spreadsheet is a similar document that you have seen before. I did try to just organize this a little bit and then provide a little bit more detail for board members so they can see what funds, what certain projects would be coming out of. This isn't a final, it's still a draft. So that does mean that we might have some swapping of funds and the such, but this is kind of where we're thinking right now. Same as in the April meeting, these yellow items are items that would be moving forward, and basically anything in yellow that has a Y in column A, those are projects that we would be moving forward with, and then anything with an N in column A, those would be put on hold for right now. A lot of the stuff at the bottom of this sheet that's put on hold, the reason that it's actually down there isn't because it isn't important to do or it's not an urgent need. It is just something that is, as you can see, scheduled in a different year. It could be in the 21-22 school year, could be something that's on the 22-23, and so that's why it's down there. Everything with the N in column A, you're going to notice, those are all going to come back. There isn't really anything in there that is just magically going to take care of itself. You're going to see this stuff come back, and since it's not in the 2021 budget, most likely you're going to see it rising up to the level of being funded for 21-22. So again, just want to highlight some of these things. The fiber runs, those are, we're getting a bunch of this work being done with the addition. And so the 9750 there that is for the fiber pit, that's coming out of the construction project. So it just seems to me like since we have those work crews on site, it just makes sense since they're going to put it in a pit by our football field, it only makes sense to just have them keep their equipment here and run those runs to those 3 locations. So then we have them done and ready to go. Couple other things, the update key card and camera system. So you can see that's the biggest ticket item. Those are 2 security projects that to me are pretty important. Our key card or our fob system, I believe it might run on a DOS system. It is an old system, and the fear with it is, when it goes down, we simply don't have a place to go and get somebody to come out and fix it. It's going to be a system that is going to need to be replaced. Camera system, it's a little bit in the same boat. We have had some additional cameras, and those newer cameras can be reused. But we have a lot of cameras that are just from an older system, and it's time, they've run their life expectancy, and it's time to upgrade them. The other thing with the camera side of that, which will be really important and a good feature, is we will have one district-wide system. So right now we basically have an elementary school system, and then we have a secondary school system, but they don't talk to each other. It's 2 separate systems. This will be one unified system that you would be able to see any of the camera footage in the entire district from that one system. Let's see, a couple other things I just want to touch base on. The roof section, you guys approved that contract for $85,333. That contractor's been notified, and so now it's just a matter of getting them scheduled. And I think they were actually wanting to maybe start a little earlier than they originally were talking. So that's always good. The cafeteria tables and painting, the cafeteria is painted just now and is for those cafeteria tables. We talked about that in April. David talked about the student center and the middle school lobby and getting some comfortable seating and stuff. So that is a piece in there. And then we have a couple of classrooms that have carpet that they're in bad shape. One of them is a borderline trip hazard because the carpet is peeling up and stuff. And so those 2 classrooms really do just need to have the carpet removed. And my personal preference when we get rid of carpet is to put something down that isn't carpet, like potentially the flooring that's in the boardroom, the vinyl planking. I know there are people that like carpet, and I get that. But when you talk about the easeability of use and cleaning and all those things, those harder surfaces are a little bit easier in larger facilities. So that would be a priority as well. Questions at all on any of the projects, any of the funding? I can tell you with 100% certainty, as you look at this spreadsheet, everything in yellow will fit into our budget and is a go. Now, just remember, we're doing, some of these projects are being funded from our construction fund, some are from LTFM, some are from operating capital. So you just have to kind of look at that to see it's different pots of money are going into play to get this many projects done. And I feel very comfortable moving forward with this group of projects for the summer to push forward. With that, I will take any questions as far as any of the projects. Cheryl, looks like you got a question.
Yes, we had spoken about removing the carpeting in classrooms before, and it's much more hygienic without it. That's not an, I don't know, as far as we were concerned, it was not an option to even put carpeting back in. That's a great plan. I love it. But I also had a question on the upgrade of key card and camera system, both in the elementary and secondary schools. The fund amount is higher than last month was quoted. Is there a reason for that? Did you finally get a good bid, or what is the reasoning for the larger amount of money?
So the amount that is on here is the entire project. There were things that were front-end items that were not on the original spreadsheet last month. So like, for instance, I think one of them was 51,000 and one of them was 53,000. Do those numbers ring a bell? Is that what you're?
Yeah, the elementary school is up 28,900 and the high school is up 74,533 from what last month's bids were.
Yep. So the numbers that were included in last month were just simply the door stations and the cameras. These numbers are all in prices for all of the software, all of the server work that needs to happen in order to have them have a sufficient storing device in order to be able to save. I can't remember if it's 14 or if it's 30 days of data. And then it also has all of the labor for the installers and pulling new cabling and wiring and all of that. So the numbers you're looking at are a all-in total cost for both of those school buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions regarding those projects or thoughts regarding those? So I do just want to bring up the kind of the elephant in the room too, because I think there are some board members that might be hearing some of this, and we kind of touched base on it a little bit when we talked about some of the, returning to normal operations and stuff, and how does that impact our budget. I know there are districts that are doing things like they're doing a spending freeze and they're doing taking other budgetary tools. I can appreciate and understand potentially the thought that goes into that. I also think that all districts are a little bit different. While I can understand that the certainty with what is the state funding going to be at the next biennium and all of that is certainly up in the air. The current status of unemployment and the economy and all those downturns associated with the pandemic aren't helping anything. But at the end of the day, none of these projects are going away. I think the roofing project is an example that while that project is always going to be a need, I think we got the price we did because we have people that are hungry to do that right now. And so, I mean, this is the first time, my understanding, that Paynesville ever received 9 bids for a roofing resegment. Usually it was 2 or 3 bids is what it is. So I can understand a person's perspective to want to hold off on doing anything. I think our list of projects are things that aren't going away. They need to be accomplished. They need to be tackled. And so I do think it's important for us to continue moving forward. And I know there are other districts in the area that are doing some other budget things. I think some of that also depends on what is your district's financial health prior to this economic downturn. I think that's a key factor into this as well. So I just want to get that out so board members understand that, yes, that's something I'm also thinking about. But I also think that this is a good time to, at least at present, we need to keep with our normal operations. We need to keep moving, and we have yet to hear anything about our funding being reduced or withheld. And so we need to keep moving forward in as close to normal operations as we can. When we get that guidance, when we get those notifications, we will make modifications and we will adjust our course as needed. Any other questions with any of those projects? Okay, so we are getting to crunch time too, because the other thing is contractors want to get their summer calendars going. And so I'm going to start working on getting these yellows tentatively on people's penciled into calendars. We won't schedule anything until we're assured that they're in the budget. But I'm going to start working with Donnie to get these things so that we have placeholders with contractors and we can get the work scheduled. End of May, our next meeting, I am hoping to have our draft of our 2021 budget, the full and complete budget for the board. So we will go through that. And then that will just be information for the board, with the idea that the board would be asked to approve that preliminary budget at the business meeting at the end of June. Questions at all with that timeline? All right. So that brings us to the last item on the agenda. If there's any requests for information.
I need to back up for just 1 second.
Let's go back to budget 1 second here. Bruce has a question.
We went to facilities. My question was on the other, and a little bit off of what Maggie talked about earlier. So when I look at our system and our operations right now, we have a lot of our expense covered. The state hasn't changed our funding coming in from other sources there. But when I look at community ed, I don't know that the people that would use that facility, and I don't know that maybe the insurance companies are still paying a fee to us, even though we're not operating. And then we have other fees like food service when the students aren't eating here. Are we still charging those families? So we don't have that. So we have that income stream. So then I'm going to tie that a little bit to what Maggie was talking about, like a rainy day. For us to think this is going to work out absolutely like clockwork. But where will we be at if we need another $100,000 strictly for operations of excessive costs from this?
Yep. So I want to just, you asked a lot in one question.
It is.
So I want to peel a little bit of apart. So first of all, I'm not quite understanding where the misinformation about food service is coming. Paynesville area schools is getting reimbursed for every breakfast it distributes and every lunch it distributes. We are not collecting that money from the state, but we are from the individual student or family. We are submitting those meals in our monthly meal count to the state under our summer food service program. And then the state is turning around and submitting that to the feds. The dollars then come to the state and they send them back to Paynesville area schools. So I have read some comments and stuff from school districts saying that they are operating food service without any revenue. Maybe they were a district that never participated in a summer meal program, and so that's why they are being forced to operate without getting revenue. But I can assure you, every meal we serve, we are getting reimbursed for that meal. So I'm not worried about that one. Community ed is a different animal. Matt is 100% spot on when he talks about how they're going without revenue. I mean, they are truly a fee for service. The amount of actual formula revenue that community ed generates, I believe it's in the ballpark of $4 per school district resident. It's not much. They are truly a user fee program. So that's one that Matt and I are going to work on. And one of the things that I've told him is that the district is going to help make community ed whole. Now, the good news is Matt has a good fund balance because he's been responsible. That being said, Matt also uses that fund balance as a tool to do some pretty cool and dynamic things, and we want that to continue. So there's things, for instance, like the CARES money, the federal stimulus plan. That money has money in there directly for local educational agencies, for school districts. Right now at the Capitol in St. Paul, they are debating how are they going to take Minnesota's share of that money directed to school districts, and how are they going to pay it out, and what strings are going to be attached to that payment. And so my first plan is whatever we can get in stimulus dollars, we're going to be able to backfill community ed with that. The other piece to this is we have some things that, for instance, we have some budget gaps right now. One of them would be in staff development. Since March 15th, there has been literally, I don't know that there's a single professional development conference that had a registration fee and had people on site that actually wasn't canceled. So we have some dollars that we have budgeted this year for staff development that now are going to be freed up. To me, that's again a shift we can do to help support community ed. So there are things like that we can go and we can use those tools to be able to help support community ed. Now, the problem that I have is, when Matt and I first did the runs, we were talking about when we were shut down for the month of April, I believe that was about $48,000 in expenditures that community ed was going to have that they took in zero revenue to offset. So we're looking at about $50,000 per month is what community ed is coming up short. And that's the wrong terminology, Matt. So I think you know what I mean when I say short. It's $50,000 in expenses that they don't have a revenue to offset. So we're looking at April and May. We're looking at $100,000 hole is what we're looking at. And we know that the CARES money is coming. We don't know in what form yet. We also know that there are some individual pools of money that the district simply isn't going to use because of distance learning, that we can also do some budgetary shifts. And so those are also going to be, those tools will be used. It's just really the first important thing to do is let's figure out what the stimulus money is, and then we can go from there and see the picture will start coming clear once we know what that stimulus plan is. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, my biggest issue was the community ed area has been self-supporting, just like you said. Yet at the same time, it is a huge conversation in every budget that we do on what's happening there. And all of a sudden, I see that whole thing disappear. And I, for one, am not interested in watching that area suffer. Obviously, you're of the same opinion.
Correct.
Because they don't have a revenue. And so I just wanted to make sure we were good.
Yep. Other questions regarding either budget or those facility projects, or kind of what next steps would be with the budget? Okay, then I think we're on to the last item on the agenda would be request for information. And maybe the easiest thing to do would just be to go around each board member and see if you have anything. Since I got two of them in the room here with me, we'll start with them. Jake, do you have anything?
I'm good.
Jake is good. Bruce?
I'm really good, actually. So far, we're really complete for everything I'm interested in at the moment.
Okay. Ashley, you're in my upper left part of my screen, so we're going to start with you. You got anything?
Me, Ashley, or other Ashley? I'm good.
You, Ashley. Thank you. Let's see. Cheryl, how about you?
Just one thing that came to mind, demolishing the Armory building. We got the go-ahead on that, I assume. And what approximately will it cost us to demolish that thing? I was just curious.
You know, if you give me another week, I can give you a good approximate. I think we're looking probably in the neighborhood of $40,000 to $45,000 to demolish it. But again, you give me another week and I'll have a solid number for you. Yeah, as far as the approval, I've been talking with Yolanda Stroud, is our rep that is at the Department of Education in Washington, DC. And yes, her and I have been on the phone. She has given me the verbal that go ahead, your change of use is going to be approved. I actually was supposed to have a physical letter from them, and it still hasn't arrived, but I do have verbal from her to go ahead and get moving on it. And they're aware of our June 1 deadline is when I told them we really need to have that building, the demolishing started at least around June 1.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with demolishing it. I was just curious as to the amount, but that's close enough. Thank you.
Yeah, and you guys will get, as soon as I get it, I'll get it out to everybody, but that's going to be about where it's going to come in. Let's see, how about Maggie? Do you have anything?
I just wanted to share something that I thought of. The Area Learning Center, their graduation is prior to our next board meeting, I believe. And I think there was an open invitation for board members. I don't know if you want to share more about that, Matt.
Yeah, I can get the actual graduation stuff. Usually we get an invite from them. I haven't seen the actual invite. As soon as I get it, I'll get out to everybody.
Awesome. And then the other thing is I appreciate just hearing updates on how faculty, staff, students are doing, because it changes. I mean, there's just a lot going on, so it's nice to hear how people are, how they're doing.
Rick, do you have anything?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Thomas, anything on your end?
No, I'm good. Just another shout out, I guess, to the admin team and the teachers for the distant learning support to the students and families and teachers and everybody across the board.
Excellent. With that completes our agenda. So the sun's still out. Go have a glorious Tuesday evening.